the act of just cutting the animal, sacrificing, is very easy to do. But the meaning of it, we have to understand before we commit that action, when we are doing it and after. Because if we don't understand the meaning of Qurban, it becomes just like another ritual. When it becomes a ritual, something that used to have meaning, but the meaning is lost and people are just continually doing it out of habit. This is exactly what has happened now. There's a great spiritual lesson to be learned from the sacrifice, from the Qurban, from Eid al-Adha. We just heard the khutbah. That is just tip of the iceberg of what the Qurban is. Because if we just look at it as just taking an animal, cutting it, and then distributing the meat, it is something that is so trivial, something that is so simple, that why you have to do it on that day? You can do it on any day. Or some too intelligent Muslims saying, why we have to cut animal? We can just give it to charity, the money. So if there is no connection first to the history, if you're not connected to your history, this is our history. This is not the history of just Hazrat Ibrahim. This is our history. If you're not connected to your history, because we are the product of history. We didn't just come like that, we came from that. Then anything that you do, even if it is something that is holy, something that is sacred, if you're not connected to the history, you don't know the meaning, it just becomes empty. You're just doing it for empty. What is the meaning that the animal is sacrificed? Just let me give you a small understanding of that. We are not scholars, we are not claiming to know so many things, but we're following friends of Allah. And we're here trying to understand what they understand. Because they understand what the Holy Prophet ﷺ understands. So what is the meaning now of that sacrifice? If we look on that day itself, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam with Hazrat Ismail, his firstborn son. Hazrat Ibrahim was sacrificing his son for the sake of Allah. Hazrat Ibrahim, who has been worshipping, who is a friend of Allah, Khalilullah, close friend of Allah, who is the father of prophets, who is one of the highest prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ever sent. That his whole life was made to be a sacrifice, because when he was born, Namrud, who had a dream that, it's a long story, but let me just give you a short version. He had the dream that this presence, this star, was going to come and is going to cover all the other lights with that light. And he asked his magicians and his sorcerers what that meaning is, and everyone was just saying, oh, it's you, it's praising him. But he knew there was something that was not right there. And someone told him the meaning of that is someone is going to be born. And that one is going to take away your kingdom and bring you down. So, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was born at that time when Namrud gave the order that every child that was born in that period of time is to be completely killed, sacrificed. And his mother, who was very old at that time too, she was guided by Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam. They walked, and she gave birth in a cave in Damascus, very far away, although it looks as if it's just a few minutes walk. The time and the space is folded. She gave birth. That whole cave became a garden. Angels were there to instruct him. He grew up understanding and knowing his Lord. So, later, when his father, but not his father, there was his uncle, because no prophets, they come from parents who are unbelievers. No prophets. And in our tradition, they also call the uncle the father, especially someone who is raising you. His uncle was a maker of idols. And long story, he cut all the idols. One he couldn't cut because made of gold and silver. He put the axe there. The people come in after their carnival, drunk, and they say, "Who did this to our idols?" And they say, "Why don't you ask him?" The golden idol that has the axe in his hand. Then word reach, this is the child that is going to challenge Nimrud. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, at that time, he was young. He was not 56. He was young. He was a teenager, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. And he had no one. He was alone. He had no one. They made the fire. They threw him inside. And the fire turned into a piece of Jannat. So, looking at that act of cutting the animal, the meaning of Hazrat Ibrahim's life and his sacrifice, which later on Hazrat Ibrahim's life, when he got married, and later when he was traveling in Egypt, certain events happened, and he got Hazrat Hajar, and she was coming from royalty, but she was caught, captured, and made to serve in the Firaun's house. Because at that time too, even the Firauns and the kings and the royalty in the old days, their servants are royalty. It's not common people. Their servants are royalty, captured from here and from there. So that was gifted to him, took, and he was approaching very old age, and him and his wife, Hazrat Sarah, but the young one was given, Hazrat Hajar, and his prayer was answered. And his prayer was to have progeny, to have children. For what? For himself, for his family, to further his tribe, to further his ambitions. His only prayer was to have children and grandchildren to continue his mission, which is to call people to Allah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a son. And then the order came, sacrifice your son. You understand how difficult this is? Sacrifice your son. And Ismail alayhi salam, Shah Haniyat said that he was sacrificed around the age of 7 years old, and at that age, the little boy becomes like a copy of the father. And the love between the two is very strong. Everything the father does, he's going to copy. Sitting like that, he sits like that. He's like a little man already. So, after leaving them, Hazrati Hajar and Hazrati Ismail, when they were born, leaving them there, visiting them, losing his son, then the order came finally to kill his son, to sacrifice his son for the sake of Allah. And he did not question. So he took, and when he took the knife that he had sharpened, and he placed it on Hazrat Ismail's throat, because he was facing. He put the son in front of him like that, face up, and he was cutting. And Hazrat Ismail says, "My father, turn me around, because I know you cannot bear to look at me when you are sacrificing me. So turn me around and go from the back. You are in the back to cut my throat. So this way you're not going to be so hurt." And Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he took the knife and he cut Hazrat Ismail's throat. He cut. It wasn't as some people saying, "Oh, it's just a test." Okay, no, he cut. But the knife did not cut. Can you imagine what he had to go through? The torture and the sacrifice, which so many people today, they have to go through so much torture and sacrifice for their children, for their loved ones. He pulled, it didn't cut. But he cut again, it didn't cut. Every year we cut animals there. You understand how painful it is just to watch if someone is cutting and the knife is not sharp enough to cut, correct? Imagine it is your child. This is real, your child. And your cutting is not cutting. He pulled it again, he cut it again, but it didn't cut. 70 times. So this sacrifice is not the spilling of blood. This sacrifice is emptying this heart of any love except for Allah. After he pulled it 70 times and it didn't cut, in his frustration, he threw the knife, and the knife landed on a piece of boulder, a big rock, and it split the rock in two. And that was when the sheep, the ram, was brought from paradise from the time of Hazrati Adam alayhi salam, from the time of Habil and Qabil, when Habil offered the best ram for the sake of Allah, and Qabil was taking care of the fields and the gardens and produce from the ground. He just gave whatever that is lying on the floor for the sake of Allah. So when we talk about Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, what to do for Qurban, the story, it didn't even begin there. There's a story beyond that, before that. And we are continuing that story. So that ram came. There was a time when what we're reciting, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahil hamd. Because Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was going to pull the knife, he says, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And Ismail alayhi salam then responded, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar. Then the angel came with that ram, walillahil hamd. And that ram was then made from the time of Adam alayhi salam to be a sacrifice in place of his Hazrat Ismail. And the ram that we're sacrificing, the sheep, the animals we're sacrificing now, is just a copy of that copy. Understand properly. Shaykh Effendi said, Awliya Allah, they are saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His mercy, if He did not substitute Hazrat Ismail with that ram from Hazrat Habil as his millet, as his nation, until Judgment Day, we have to follow that sunnat of sacrificing our firstborn son for the sake of Allah. So now, we think we are sacrificing, we're doing something for the sake of Allah. But Allah is reminding us of His mercy. That what we think that we are sacrificing, we're thinking that we're giving up, is not that we are giving up something. He is giving us. When we are sacrificing our heart, kicking out all those idols, as Ibrahim alayhi salam, he finished all those idols. Like when he built the Kaaba, the Baytullah, that this heart is our Baytullah, that we are building it. The day of Qurban must make us to understand that this is our purpose. And that just as cut the animal, that is just a small sign, small sign. Of course, I'm not saying it's trivial, but I'm saying there's so many signs, but it's just one sign that must make us to understand and realize what we are sacrificing to take away the idols, and what we are building for the sake of Allah to return to Him. So what is it that we have to do for Qurban? First, we have to understand this. How many are understanding this? But you've never heard something like this before. We never did until we met Shaykh Effendi. Of course, it's not coming from us, it's coming from him. So now, your whole understanding of just taking an animal and cutting and distributing it, that is just a small sign of something that is really huge. So now you're not going to ask questions like, why can't you just give money, give charity? Then you're going to understand that we are part of a very huge divine history, and we're part of a very huge divine future. You feel yourself connected. And when you start to prepare yourself for all of this, with this, there are so many things to prepare. But this kind of understanding, you're going to approach these days and that act with a completely different understanding and heart and attitude, everything is different. Your Hajj is going to be different too. The actions that you're going to make now will be filled with what we talked about earlier, tafakkur. Because you can just take the animal and cut. You can just run mindlessly from Safa to Marwa. You can just mindlessly go around the Kaaba. Or if it's not mindless, you're just thinking different things. Or you may be thinking you love Allah too. But if you're not making the proper connection, not the proper blessings are going to come for you to understand. Because the reality is a person has to return from the Holy Land to become what? To become holy. But we see millions going, millions coming back, but the world is getting worse. I don't mean things that are just controlled by geopolitics. I'm talking about households, communities, towns. It's not becoming better. Because they're looking at these things as just a ritual. Ritual means you can substitute one for another. It doesn't matter. It's just a thing. It's just an action. So, we said this so many times, just to understand in these days of Qurban, that we have to sacrifice our ego. First, we have to destroy the idols that is in our heart. Then we have to sacrifice our ego. That is enough for a believer, for him to think for the rest of his life what that means. And what are the idols that he is destroying? And what is his ego that he's sacrificing? Understand? So, I'm not going to tell you what are the actions that you're going to do before the Qurban, or the zikr you're supposed to do, or the ghusl, or the putting on surma, or this or that. That you can find anywhere. But all those, again, they are actions. I'm not saying these actions are not important. They are important. You should do that. You must do that. But if it doesn't have meaning, you don't know why you're doing it, it becomes very empty. It becomes empty. Millions are going to go to stone the shaitan. Do you think shaitan is there? They're doing that at the spot where, when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam with Hazrat Ismail, they were walking, and shaitan tried to talk to both of them to convince them that this is a wrong decision. The voices that you heard, how do you know it's coming from your Lord? Why is your father bringing you somewhere? He's probably going to do something terrible to you. And they didn't listen. So they took some stones and they threw it. And don't think what they threw is just those stones too. They threw at 3 different spots. Now millions are going to go there thinking that shaitan is there. And they're throwing to destroy shaitan. Shaitan is inside of you. He's not so stupid that he's going to stand there waiting to be stoned. Are we understanding that shaitan that is inside of us, that we want to stone, that we want to get rid of, that we want to repel? So many people say, what, me? I have shaitan inside? Astaghfirullah. They're going to get very offended if you say shaitan is inside of you. Correct? Majority of the people, you go up to them and you tell them, shaitan is inside of you. They're going to get very offended. But this is not Sufi talk. Holy Prophet says, shaitan flows in the veins of the children of Adam. If you don't identify that first, and shaitan and your ego inside of you, to repel that, to prepare yourself, to kick that, to stone that, then that action is just empty. Like what Shaykh Effendi said, when you throw, you must think, this is the shaitanic quality that I have to throw, I have to get out from myself. When I get angry, I get drunk, and I want to destroy it. Take that anger, throw it out from you. I get greedy, I don't think about anyone else. I just want what I want. Take that out. Make that intention and be serious to throw it out from you. Which means for the Hajj, you have to prepare your whole life for it. In the old days, they prepared their whole lives for the Hajj. They don't give a couple of $100 to go to a Hajj package orientation or training camp for Hajj, to be trained for the Hajj. They spend their whole lives. Because we're going to Baytullah. As Shaykh Maulana is saying, yes, of course Allah's presence is there. You're saying, how can he say, come to my house and I'm not there? That he's not there. Of course his presence is there. He's not empty. But what are you going to come with? What are you going to bring with you to the presence of your Lord? How many are thinking? If we tell them, have you prepared yourself for the Hajj? Yes. What have you prepared? I brought my credit cards. I have my ihram. I have everything. I have my cell phone. Definitely, because Hajj is now time for taking selfies. They're more concerned about how other people look at them than Allah. Taking selfies everywhere. And usually when they take selfies, they are in front and the Kaaba is behind. They are in front and the maqam of the Prophet is behind. They are always them. Ego is in front and the holiness, it is behind them. They're standing, showing their back to it and taking and showing to the whole world, but they don't care what Allah is seeing, what His angels are seeing, how the prophets that they are there and they are seeing, and the awliya Allah they are seeing. So now, the whole time before the Hajj, you're not prepared. What kind of Hajj that's going to be? And what kind of Hajj are you going to be when you come back? You're going to become even more donkey. Some, they just get drunk because you're at that level. You just want to be drunk with the love and the closeness of Allah. Prophet ﷺ was never drunk. Even when he's in Qaba Qawsain, he was not drunk. He came back to do what? To bring his ummah back. So those who think, oh, Hajj is just feeling very good and I need to go there, then you're not really following your Prophet. Because your Prophet ﷺ, he came back, not from the Hajj, from the Mi'raj, from divine presence, to come back and to bring the ummah and to show the way. So, there are things that we need to prepare ourselves for. And that time, when we take off the ihram, you went to the Hajj, no? When you take off the ihram, when you sacrifice and you take off the ihram, and you wear your regular clothes again, a regret must come to you that you're coming back to this asfala safilin, to this lower world again. But now you're not going to carry the ihram around you. You're going to carry it inside. You're going to understand this. You're going to carry it inside of you, your shroud. If people are doing this properly, the light that each Hajj can bring from the Haramain, it will destroy every darkness in this world. Just by their own shining example of a one who was there in the presence of his Lord, who says Labbaik, and he was there in the presence of his Lord, and he comes back, and when he shows his face, everyone sees this one was in the presence of his Lord, and they take from that. People are stuck with ritual. People are saying, you should go, everyone should go, should go, should go, should go, for empty. May Allah accept our weak service, inshallah, and forgive us. Wa min Allahu tawfiq. Fatiha. Amin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.